It's a carnival with a cause. Rio de Janeiro has officially wrapped up 5 days of dancing, costumes, and a nightly parade of floats, but the parties aren't stopping. Some of this year's celebrations had political themes, including statements against racism. The celebrations began last Friday and officially ended at noon Wednesday, but the festivities are set to continue through this upcoming weekend with another big parade coming on Saturday. Even as they celebrate, people in Rio de Janeiro have been worried about water shortages. That's because Brazil is in the midst of its worst drought in more than a generation. Reservoirs are running dangerously low. Here to talk with us about the drought in Brazil is Rachel Biderman. She's the director of the World Resources Institute program for Brazil, and she joins us from Sao Paulo. Thanks so much for joining us. Worst drought in 80 years. What's driving this?
Well, bad management of our resources. We also have been very abusive in the way we use water. We have been spoiled in a way, using water more than we should. So it's about time we learn how to deal with our resources here. A lot to learn with this drought this year.
Well, I mentioned that the reservoirs are running dangerously low. The biggest one is only at 6% of capacity. We have some pictures of some of the reservoirs just to illustrate how serious this problem is. The government has begun rationing water. More than 4 million people are impacted, and it actually could get worse. So people, they're actually beginning to hoard water in their homes. What can or should the government do about that?
Yes, people are buying water reservoirs for their houses. They're building reservoirs in their houses. We are lacking materials in the city stores to build those. And government has only now started to create the crisis committees, and not much information is accessible to the population. So there's a bit of a hysteria going on here. People not knowing what will happen, and we seem to not be able to have water for the next year, enough for the next year. So the plans are not out there yet. We are expecting government to be more proactive.
You mentioned bad management. Brazilians have been protesting against the government's water policy, and we have videos, some of those protests. The problem in Brazil is that so much of the country's electricity, actually the grid itself, tied to hydropower. So when there's a lack of water, there's also a lack of electricity. Is relying so much on hydropower, is that a mistake?
Yeah, well, historically, this is how our energy basis has been built. But we did have, 15 years ago, a huge crisis like this, which really affected the supply of energy. And then back then, government created a plan B, which is to build thermal plants. We are running those thermal plants now in full capacity. They will not be able to deliver enough energy. So we badly need to invest more and have the new renewable energy plants installed. You know, we need to build more wind and solar capacity in this country. We're behind in those policies.
Work to improve the country's infrastructure, that's ongoing. The government says something like 37% of tap water is just wasted because of problems with leaky pipes. How expensive is this going to be to fix? How much is the country just basically at the mercy of Mother Nature, would you say?
Well, we're investing in the state of Sao Paulo more than $1 billion now with great infrastructure. We, from the environmental movement and environmental organizations, believe that it would be wiser to invest in the long run to restore the capacity of nature to retain water. So restoring our forests is very, very urgent. We've been destroying forests for 500 years in this area of the country. Very little remains. So we need to go back into a situation where nature can help provide water. Investments in only gray infrastructure, meaning, you know, civil construction, will not be enough. And slowly government is realizing that, both at the federal and state levels, and they're beginning to invest more in creating the policies for restoration of degraded areas so that nature can provide water as it normally does.
All right, some lessons learned there in Brazil. Rachel Biderman, the director of the World Resources Institute program, joining us. Thanks so much.